Okay, in this video, what we're going to do is take a look at the fall off section inside of a field. It's a really important part of creating interesting looking Mograph animations. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to create just a basic setup here. Use this setup a number of times, but we want to start by creating a cube and then placing this cube inside of a cloner. Once we've done that, we'll have created this little shape here, which is a good start. I am going to toggle on my lines just so we can see the spacing here ends up working perfectly. And now what I'm going to do is just increase my count a decent amount. So maybe I'll do something like 13 by 13. Okay, and that's looking good. I'm also going to get rid of my work plane since that's going to be in our way. And now what we're going to do is add an effector to this, since what we really want to do is take a look at the fall off section in a field. So with the cloner selected, come over here to our effectors, and we'll just go with a plain effector, though this can work for just about any effector that utilizes a field. And we can see that is moving it straight up. And so now what we'll do is go in the parameter tab and increase this just a bit more, maybe something like 250 or so. Come into our field section and create a linear field. Now this is where we're starting to see this plane effector be applied, and visually we can see how it's being applied based on this color. And so white means the effector is not being applied at all. Red means 100%. Okay, now I'm going to try and scale this field up, but if you just scale it up regularly, you're just going to increase its length. In order to make the icon itself a bit larger and a little bit easier to see, what we're going to do is switch to object mode. We can go ahead and now scale this up. And so this is increasing the length, although not technically using this property here, but also just visually making this a little bit easier for us to see. And I'm going to pull this out to the side here, just so once again, we can see this a little bit better. Now, if I need to increase the length, I can. And we'll do something like that. Actually, let's increase the Y position a little bit. So the steeper this is, easier it will be to kind of see what we're talking about here with the remapping section. So this remapping section deals with how this effector is being applied inside of our field. Okay, so kind of from 0% to 100. And the way I like to think of these is like keyframes, where this is our first keyframe and this is our last keyframe. And by default, we're essentially getting linear interpolation here. And that's exactly what we see in the remapping section. We see a linear representation from 0 to 100. And the way we fix this is with our contour mode. Okay, so I can switch this contour mode, and we have several different options here. Quadratic, step, and quantize are, for all intents and purposes, the same, as well as curve, which we'll come back to. But before we actually take a look at those, let's quickly animate this. So I'm going to come over here and go from left. So 100% linear field, keyframe my X position at frame 0, maybe go to say frame 50. Oops, pull this all the way through. Right. So with that keyframe now, see this. And actually, this is kind of the opposite of what I want, where it's going from 100% strength to 0% strength. So let's go ahead and switch that. And this is actually something really common in Mograph, where you kind of end up getting the opposite of what you want. And a very easy way to fix that is just to invert the strength here. So now we can see we're going from 0 to 100. All right. And once again, graph here, the remapping here matches what we're seeing in our cloner. So now we can come in and start working with our contour. So I'm going to set this contour mode to quadratic to start, because this is probably my favorite, because what it's going to allow us to do is either kind of push this down and give this a little bit of a slower part towards the end there, or if we go positive, a little bit of a faster, just as if these were keyframes and we were working with the interpolation there. And this absolutely impacts the way your animation looks. So if you go really, really positive, that can make a big difference. If you go really negative, that can make a big difference. And so any one of these is better than just leaving it as linear, though really you want to think about the look and the movement you actually want and make sure your contour matches that. So that's quadratic. I like it because it does, you know, either adds a slower in or faster, or slower out or a faster out, depending on which I want. Then step is very much like the step or hold interpolation we have. I say hold because I know that's the what it's called in After Effects, and we can adjust the number of steps if we like here. So we don't just have to have one like we do with hold interpolation. We can break this up however many times we would like. And this can allow us to achieve almost like a stop motion kind of animation here. This would be a little bit more noticeable if I didn't have cubes, if I maybe had some text or something like that. And then the more steps you add, the less of this effect you will actually see as it does start to smooth out. And I mentioned Quantize is essentially the same thing. In fact, it still has a number of steps. It keeps that number of steps. Nothing visually changed in our remapping, nor can I see really anything having changed here. It obviously is somewhat different, or else, why would it be there? Lastly, we have curves, and this really allows us to treat this like keyframes. Okay, so we have a point Bezier handle here, a point and a Bezier handle there, and we can do anything we could do in our timeline in our curve editor right here as well. So maybe we do something like this. And once again, anything we do here has an impact on the way our animation looks. So the idea here is to really start figuring out interesting ways we can change our Mograph animation and get it away from the linear kind of remapping that we start with. And this is really just the beginning here, is this contour section, because on top of that, we also can adjust the keyframes for our linear field. We could come into our timeline, find our linear field, switch to F curve mode, frame it by hitting H, and do the same type of thing here. Okay. Now, I think honestly, as you're starting out, it's probably best to pick one. And that's why I recommend starting with the remapping. But now that I have both of these essentially doing the same thing, you can almost see that effect kind of multiplied against itself. And so you can get some really interesting things when you do similar kind of interpolation in matching here with your graphs, but also if you do really different stuff as well. So if I take this and just really exaggerate, okay, so, it really helps to have an understanding of what curves do to animation in general. And then once you have that, you can come in, start working with the curve here, and then working with the actual keyframes for your linear field. Then the options are limitless. And then if you want to go even further, we could add, say, a delay field on top, switch that to spring. And, now we have some really, really nice, interesting Mograph animation that is so much more interesting than just that linear interpolation we started with. So that will do it for this video. Let me know if there is anything else you want to see, and take care.